The room was silent except for the sound of a few officers turning pages. Tokyo, early 1941. Japan's military leaders were discussing a future that seemed impossible to avoid. War with the United States was moving closer every month. Oil supplies were shrinking. Diplomatic talks were failing. Across the Pacific, America possessed enormous industrial. Yet in that room sat one man who understood that power better than almost anyone else in Japan. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto had lived in America. He had studied there. He had traveled across the country and seen its factories, cities, railroads, and endless resources with his own eyes. He knew something many of his fellow officers did not want to hear. If Japan entered a long war against the United States, Japan would likely lose. But Yamamoto was trapped by a terrible reality. He did not control Japan's political direction. He did not decide whether war would happen. The momentum toward conflict was growing stronger every day. If war came, he believed Japan had only one chance. It would have to strike so hard, so sudden, and so successfully that America might lose the will to fight. It was a gamble so dangerous that many officers considered it reckless. Others considered it madness. Yet Yamamoto was willing to risk everything on it. Few people knew that this gamble would eventually become one of the most famous military operations in history. Fewer still knew that the man who pushed hardest for it would never receive the gratitude he expected from the nation he served. This is the story of Isoroku Yamamoto, the admiral who helped give Japan Pearl Harbor, and whose own country never truly said thank you. Long before Pearl Harbor, Yamamoto's life had already been shaped by war. He was born on April 4, 1884, in Nagaoka, in Niigata Prefecture. Japan was changing rapidly. The country was modernizing, building industries, and expanding its military power. As a young man, Yamamoto joined the Imperial Japanese Navy. He quickly developed a reputation for intelligence, discipline, and strategic thinking. Then came the event that nearly killed him. On May 27, 1905, during the Russo-Japanese War, the Japanese fleet fought the Russian Baltic Fleet in the Battle of Tsushima. It became one of the most important naval victories in history. Young officer Isoroku Yamamoto was serving aboard the cruiser Nishin when Russian shells struck the ship. The explosion was devastating. Yamamoto was badly wounded. He lost 2 fingers on his left hand. Many sailors around him never survived. The experience stayed with him forever. He understood the brutal reality of combat. War was not glory. War was blood, fire, and luck. 1 second separated life from death. Over the next decades, Yamamoto continued rising through the ranks. Unlike many Japanese officers, he spent significant time studying the outside world. In 1919, he traveled to the United States and attended Harvard University. Later, he served as a naval attaché in Washington. During these years, he learned something that would influence every major decision he made. America was powerful beyond imagination. He saw enormous factories producing goods on a scale Japan could not match. He saw oil fields, steel mills, rail networks, and industrial centers stretching across the country. He watched a nation capable of mobilizing resources at extraordinary speed. Years later, many people would describe Yamamoto as a warmonger because of Pearl Harbor. The reality was far more complicated. Ironically, Yamamoto was one of the Japanese leaders most concerned about fighting America. He repeatedly warned political leaders and military officials about the risk. He understood that Japan could achieve victories during the opening months of a war. But he doubted Japan could sustain a long conflict against a nation with America's industrial strength. As tensions increased during the late 1930s, Yamamoto's warnings became more urgent. Japan's war in China was consuming resources. Relations with the United States continued deteriorating. Economic sanctions increased pressure on Japan. Oil became a growing concern, yet many leaders believed war might be necessary. Yamamoto faced an impossible dilemma. He opposed a long war with America. Yet if war became unavoidable, he had a duty to prepare Japan's navy for success. Most naval plans at the time focused on traditional battles. Japanese leaders expected American forces to cross the Pacific, where Japan would gradually weaken them before a decisive fleet engagement. Yamamoto hated this idea. He believed waiting for America to act would be a fatal mistake. Instead, he proposed something bold. Strike first. Hit the American Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. Destroy America's battleships. Cripple its ability to respond. Buy Japan time to secure territory across the Pacific. The proposal shocked many officers. Pearl Harbor was nearly 4,000 miles from Japan. The attack would require extraordinary planning, secrecy, navigation, training, and luck. A single mistake could expose the fleet. Bad weather could ruin everything. American patrol aircraft could discover the task force. Mechanical failures could derail the mission. The risks seemed endless. Many senior officers resisted. Some believed the operation was too dangerous. Others argued the fleet should remain closer to home waters. Yamamoto refused to back down. This was not because he believed victory was guaranteed. It was because he believed every other option was even worse. If Japan entered war without crippling America's Pacific, the United States would eventually overwhelm Japan's defenses. In Yamamoto's mind, Pearl Harbor represented a desperate chance rather than a perfect solution. During 1941, planning accelerated. The operation required innovation. Japanese pilots practiced torpedo attacks under conditions resembling Pearl Harbor's shallow waters. Engineers modified torpedoes. Aircrews trained relentlessly. Carrier groups rehearsed formation movements and attack procedures. The level of preparation was remarkable. Meanwhile, diplomacy continued publicly. Negotiations between Japan and the United States dragged on. Behind the scenes, military planners worked toward war. As autumn turned to winter, the attack force assembled. 6 aircraft carriers would form the striking arm. It was one of the most powerful carrier forces ever assembled up to that point. The fleet sailed under strict secrecy. Radio silence was maintained. The ships crossed the cold North Pacific. Thousands of sailors and aviators knew they were participating in a mission unlike anything attempted before. Even then, success was uncertain. Yamamoto understood that. Every day brought new opportunities for disaster. The fleet could be discovered. Weather could interfere. The attack might fail. Yet the task force continued eastward. Then came December 7, 1941. Shortly before 8 a.m. local time, the first wave approached Hawaii. Many Americans were enjoying a quiet Sunday morning. Some sailors were eating breakfast. Others were sleeping. Few expected danger. Then the sky filled with aircraft. Within minutes, explosions erupted across Pearl Harbor. Torpedoes slammed into battleships. Bombs struck airfields. Smoke climbed into the air. Flames spread across ships and installations. Confusion turned into chaos. The attack achieved much of what Yamamoto had hoped. American battleships suffered catastrophic damage. The attack stunned the United States. Across Japan, celebrations erupted. The operation seemed like a brilliant success. Newspapers praised the Navy. Military leaders congratulated themselves. The world watched in shock. Yet while others celebrated, Yamamoto saw problems that many overlooked. Several critical American aircraft carriers were not present. Important repair facilities survived. Fuel storage installations remained in. Most importantly, the attack had not destroyed America's industrial capacity. The United States remained powerful, extremely powerful. Yamamoto reportedly understood this almost immediately. The tactical victory was undeniable. The strategic future remained uncertain. In the weeks that followed, Japan achieved stunning successes across Asia and the Pacific. Territory fell rapidly. Japanese forces advanced through the Philippines, Malaya, Hong Kong, and the Dutch East Indies. For a time, Yamamoto's gamble appeared brilliant. The empire expanded dramatically. American forces struggled to respond. Many people believed Japan had fundamentally changed the balance of power. But beneath the surface, another story was unfolding. American factories were accelerating production. Shipyards expanded operations. Aircraft manufacturing exploded. New warships entered construction. Millions of Americans mobilized for war. Exactly the scenario Yamamoto had feared was becoming reality. The attack had not weakened American determination. It had strengthened it. Rather than forcing negotiations, Pearl Harbor united the United States. The gamble that was supposed to buy time had awakened a giant. Yamamoto understood the danger. He continued searching for opportunities to weaken American naval power before America's industrial strength became overwhelming. This thinking helped shape plans leading to the Battle of Midway in June 1942. Yamamoto hoped to lure American carriers into battle and destroy them. Instead, disaster struck. American codebreakers had gained crucial intel. When Japanese forces approached Midway, American carriers were waiting. The result changed the Pacific War. 4 Japanese aircraft carriers were lost. Thousands of experienced sailors and aviators died. The losses were irreplaceable. For Japan, Midway was a catastrophe. For Yamamoto, it represented the beginning of a strategic decline that would become increasingly difficult to stop. As the war continued, Japan faced growing pressure. American forces advanced steadily. Industrial production continued rising. New aircraft, ships, and weapons entered service in enormous numbers. Every year the balance shifted further against Japan. Yet Yamamoto remained respected throughout the Navy. He continued directing operations while traveling extensively between commands. Then came the event that ended his life. American intelligence intercepted communications revealing Yamamoto's travel plans. The opportunity was extraordinary. He would be flying through the Solomon Islands on April 18, 1943. American leaders approved an interception mission. The operation required precision navigation over hundreds of miles of ocean. Fighter pilots launched from Guadalcanal. They flew at low altitude to avoid detection. Timing had to be exact. Minutes mattered. When the American fighters reached the interception point, Yamamoto's aircraft appeared almost exactly as expected. The attack happened quickly. His aircraft crashed into the jungle. Isoroku Yamamoto was dead at age 59. The man who had helped plan Pearl Harbor had been killed by an operation made possible through intelligence, technology, and coordination that reflected America's growing wartime capabilities. News of his death shocked Japan. The government initially kept the information secret. Officials feared the impact on morale. Eventually, the public learned the truth. National mourning followed. Yamamoto received honors and recognition. Yet something strange happened in the decades after the war. Pearl Harbor became one of the most famous events of the 20th century. Millions of people learned about the attack. Movies were made, books were written, documentaries were produced. The attack itself became legendary. But the man behind the gamble gradually faded from public attention. Many Japanese remembered him, historians studied him, yet he never became the universally celebrated national hero some might have expected. Part of the reason was complexity. Yamamoto was difficult to place into simple categories. He was neither a straightforward warrior nor a straightforward peacemaker. He warned against war while planning one of history's most famous surprise attacks. He understood American power yet helped launch the operation that brought America fully into the conflict. He achieved one of Japan's greatest tactical victories while helping begin a chain of events that ended in national defeat. History rarely knows what to do with such figures. Heroes are easier. Villains are easier. Complicated people. The truth is that Yamamoto spent much of his career trapped between realities. He did not control Japan's political decisions. He could not stop the movement toward war. Once war appeared inevitable, he searched for the option he believed offered the best chance of success. That option became Pearl Harbor. It was the largest gamble of his life. For a few hours on December 7, 1941, it looked like a perfect bet. Then, history kept moving. The attack that shocked America also transformed America. The victory that amazed the world ultimately failed to secure Japan's future, and the admiral who pushed hardest for the plan never lived long enough to see how the story would end. Today, when people hear the words Pearl Harbor, they usually think of burning battleships, diving aircraft, and the beginning of America's war in the Pacific. Few stop to think about the man who spent years forcing an unwilling navy to accept a plan many considered impossible. Fewer still remember how often he warned about America's strength before the war began. That is perhaps the greatest irony of all. The man who gave Japan Pearl Harbor was also one of the men who understood most clearly what Pearl Harbor could never accomplish. He knew Japan could win battles. He feared Japan could not win the war. In the end, both beliefs proved correct. Pearl Harbor succeeded beyond expectations tactically. The war that followed unfolded almost exactly as Yamamoto feared. His gamble remains one of history's most fascinating decisions. It required courage, intelligence, confidence, and enormous risk. It also carried consequences that stretched far beyond anything one man could control. And so the story of Isoroku Yamamoto is not simply the story of Pearl Harbor. It is the story of a man who saw danger coming, failed to stop it, and then bet everything on one extraordinary move. For a brief moment, he changed the course of history. Yet when history remembers Pearl Harbor, his name often stands in the shadows. The ships still rest beneath the waters of Hawaii. The photographs remain. The memories survive. But the admiral who risked everything on that cold December gamble remains one of the most misunderstood figures of the Second World War. He gave Japan its most famous surprise attack. He gave his nation the victory it wanted. And in the end, the nation he served never truly found a way to thank him.